As part of the long-ignored mini-series Welcome to Portsmouth, I am now moving north to visit an archaeological site called Old Winchester Hill. Before I begin, however, I would like to acknowledge that for this video I have teamed up with Beware the Lizards 42, an archaeological top bod. It has been some time since I've actively undertaken any formal study in archaeology, and Beware the Lizards has been a great help in keeping my terminology and facts straight. Anyway, this is Old Winchester Hill. Despite the name, the hill is in fact some distance away from the city of Winchester, which is some 11 miles to the west. The site has been occupied since the Mesolithic era, between 10,000 to 5,000 years ago. This site was likely to have been a seasonal hunting ground. Small worked flints called microliths, typical of this era, have been found in the valley that the hill sits at the top of. Following this, there is a large piece of evidence of occupation during the Neolithic, between 5000 to 2000 BC. This takes the form of the giant's grave at the foot of the hill. It is of course not the burial site of a giant, rather it's a communal tomb that had held most likely the bones of important ancestors to the community that once existed here. These remains were likely left out in a practice called excarnation. The body would be placed in a location, possibly a platform, to be left for natural processes to remove the flesh. Once this was done, the remaining bones would be placed with the others in the barrow. This sort of burial is a common feature of the Neolithic era. It is often argued that these large communal burials indicate that the Neolithic was an era where societies were more egalitarian. It is, however, a point of note that despite the large number of remains in long barrows, the numbers are unlikely to match the number of individuals that lived. It is possible that the rest of the persons who are unaccounted for were intentionally disposed of totally by excarnation, bones and all, or buried in another medium, such as water. The barrow would have originally been lozenge-shaped, with 2 ditches dug out either side of it. Over time, this one has been damaged by a combination of plant growth, grave robbers, and/or farming. All of these contribute to adverse taphonomic conditions, meaning that whatever remains may be within the long barrow may not be in the best possible condition. It is important to note, when dealing with Neolithic ritualistic structures, such as this long barrow, that they are not to be viewed in isolation. It is increasingly perceived that these structures tend to be part of a larger ritualistic landscape. This example is no different, with other ancient structures dotted around the landscape that it's situated in. Moving on in time, between 2200 and 750 BC, a large number of Bronze Age barrows appear in the landscape. A few hundred metres from the long barrow, in what is now the corner of 2 fields, there was once a pond or bowl barrow. Circular in shape, a bowl barrow consists of a bowl-shaped indentation in the ground, with a burial in the centre of it. The more obvious Bronze Age barrows in the area are the round barrows. These are almost the inverse of a pond barrow. A large circular-based earthen mound that contains up to 3 burials. These are in a prominent site atop the hill. It is quite probable that the position of these barrows was directly influenced by the position of other, older ritualistic structures in the landscape, such as the previously mentioned long barrow. A notable difference with these later barrows is that they only contain a couple of burials, where the earlier long barrow contained many interred remains. Round barrows were also known to possess grave goods, such as gold and weapons. This is a lure that drew people to dig out the tops of many round barrows over the years, these examples included. Towards the end of the Bronze Age or early Iron Age, field systems were constructed in the area around the hill. These were much smaller than the ones in use today. The outlines of these fields are still visible as crop marks in aerial photographs. Moving on into the Iron Age between 750 BC and 43 AD, with these fields being constructed, the hill fort became a defendable habitation. The earthworks of the fort have a ditch and bank profile. An outer ditch is cut out of the hill, and a bank is built up inside of this. In combination with the gradient of the hill, this provides a great obstacle, as it is. However, it is likely that a palisade, or large wooden wall, also once existed on top of the bank. Some time ago, a friend of mine was studying this hill fort, and I was helping them out. I suggested that we do some reenactment archaeology. Supposing that we were attacking the fort from the direction of the car park to the north, and we did not want to take the modern footpath. So we cut across the, for want of a better term, valley between the car park and the hill fort. Crossing a fence, we headed down to the woods at the bottom of the hill. I had forgotten why this area was fenced off, but the information came flooding back to me about halfway to the fort. I saw a large, fresh gouge taken out of the woodland floor, approximately 1 metre across, and with darker dirt spread about the circumference over the normal detritus. We stopped, and I had to inform my friend that we were actually in an area where a large amount of ordnance was dumped and or tested during the Second World War, and it was therefore reasonable to assume that this was a blast crater. My friend was not pleased that I had, up until then, forgotten what they viewed as an important piece of information. Rather more gingerly than before, we made our way towards the hill fort. Once we had cleared the woods and perceived we were safe from becoming World War II casualties, we set about the task of assaulting the hill. Running at first and then jogging, followed by walking, and then out and out climbing towards the top. When we reached the top of the bank, we had decided that the hill fort was indeed defendable. We had also come to the conclusion that walkers do not expect to find people suddenly appear from over the top of some Iron Age defences on top of a steep slope.
Very disappointed in this particular area.
There's so many things that could easily go wrong.
Well, that's
That wasn't bad, except that you could have landed on the grass.